Hey guys, welcome back. This week I'm joined by Stephen Downs. You may know him on social as One Arm Surfer. So I'll let him introduce himself. How you doing, Stephen?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you, Ross. How are you?
Yeah, all good, thank you. So for those that might not know who you are,
So yeah,
or what your history is, can you give us a bit of a bio about yourself?
I'm a surfer of 40 plus years, stand-up surfer, um, just pretty average Joe surfer really, but always loved surfing. It's always been my passion. I like other things as well, but surfing's always been the thing that has really been a real priority in my life, I guess you'd say. And then coming up to the 3 year anniversary of it now, I found a lump in my neck. And the lump was in the same place. I found a lump 25 years earlier, and the lump that I found sort of in 1997 turned out to be Hodgkin's lymphoma, for which I underwent 20 sessions of radiotherapy. To all intents and purposes, I was cured of cancer. I was cancer free for 25 years, and then May 2022 happened to find a lump in my neck in exactly the same place. Went to the doctors. After sort of a few biopsies, a few ultrasounds, they identified the lump as what's called a sarcoma. Sarcomas are rare cancers that affect either the soft tissue or bone. Notoriously difficult to treat, notoriously difficult to detect. And often by the time they are detected, it's too late to really do anything about them. But I was fortunate that they found mine in time to be able to do something about it. Um, but the course of action was quite drastic. And after a consultation with the surgeons, they told me that it would be necessary that they could get the tumour out. The tumour to me, it felt like the size of a golf ball, but in effect, it was described to me as about the size of a can of baked beans or a large mango, so almost like an iceberg, really. That there was a tiny bit of it showing on the surface. And they told me it'd be possible to get it out, but to do so would necessitate the amputation of my arm. Um, that's never words you expect to hear in your life, really. And then there's other, how do you deal with being told you're going to amputate your arm? My initial reaction was, no, you're not amputating my arm, no way. Um, and one of the surgeons just said to me, this will kill you, Stephen. Sent me for another scan. Um, Went back the week later, and one of the surgeons said, "How do you feel about what we told you last week?" And I said, "Well, you said you might amputate my arm." And he said, "Yeah, we are going to amputate your arm and your shoulder and your collarbone, 3 ribs, and a proportion of your chest wall." Um, Saying it back now, and having retold it, many times, it rolls off the tongue, but it it's hard to remember how daunting and how devastating that felt.
Mm.
That you're going to chop my arm off. You're going to chop my arm off. No, no way. Um, but then, with about a week to go, I found acceptance with what was happening. I don't know how, I don't know why, but I stopped fighting, or stopped trying to find a way out of it, and just accepted that the way out of it um, is the amputation of my arm. And I've been incredibly fortunate. Um, 4 surgeons operated on me. I think it was for 12 hours. So 4 surgeons, 4 surgical teams. Um, and I don't know if this will be a podcast, that it'll just be audio or whether it'll be visual, but they had to carve a big chunk of my neck out as well. It's funny enough, it's called a shark bite, the thing they carved out. But I've been incredibly fortunate with my recovery, that it's been on a physical level, it's been very linear. That I haven't
Mm,
really touched wood, haven't really had any setbacks. The lead surgeon who operated on me, I subsequently found out, um, is authorised to operate on the king. So, God bless the NHS that just me, just a random normal citizen of the UK, was operated on a surgeon who is authorised to operate on the king. Now, whether you believe in the monarchy, whether you believe in royalty or not, he is a very high level surgeon. So I was incredibly fortunate to have someone of that stature operate on me and lead the operation. And uh, he said a few things to me that words that I'll never forget. One of them was, he repeatedly said to me, "Stephen, we will get you through this. We will get you through this." And I remember him coming to see me on the Monday after the operation, and I just broke down crying in front of him. His name was Captain Surgeon Professor Rory Rickard, and I remember him coming, and he was like, "How are you?" And I'm like, "I'm okay, I'm okay." And I said, "You were good for your word. You were good for your word. You got me through this. You promised me you'd get me through it, and you got me through it." And I remember just crying. Um, but yeah, spent 10 days in hospital. Um, really lucky with the treatment I got. The NHS were absolutely fantastic. I know there's lots of stories around the NHS at the moment where people don't get the care they need for whatever reason. But from my point of view, the level of the surgeons, the quality of the operation they did, and the aftercare was absolutely incredible. So I'll always be incredibly grateful to those people because
mm.
they saved my life. That's the reality of it. So that's
Yeah.
that's the yeah, that's the surgery aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean that I can't even begin to imagine what that sort of thought process even begun to look like, having to sort of just make that decision. If I suppose in one way, do you even call it a decision um, when it's one of two outcomes? Sort of, it might just be the given, isn't it? That could, I suppose, go down a very sort of depressing line with that one, with the current state of mental health in the world at the moment. But um, how? So I'm curious. Did you do a lot of surfing before your operation?
Yeah, my parents emigrated to Australia in the early '80s, so when I was about 7 or 8, and I learned to surf there. It wasn't like a conscious decision that "Right, I'm going to be a surfer." We just spent a lot of time on the beach, um, and it was just playing in the sea. It wasn't this lifestyle choice that I made at 8 years old that I'm going to be a surfer. It was literally playing in the sea, and it wasn't even on proper surfboards. I'd kneeboard, I'd lie down on it, I'd just mess around. And then we moved back to England in 1985, and we used to come on holiday to Cornwall for 2 weeks. And at the time, the Foster's Boardmasters would be on, or the Hot Tuners Boardmasters, whatever it was. And you'd see iconic surfers. You'd see Ocky, you'd see Tom Curran, you'd see the Hull brothers, Barton Lynch, all those, Damien, all those guys. Martin Potter was sort of at the sort of pinnacle of his powers at that point. But I lived in Manchester, so I've maybe surfed 2 weeks in a year, and that's why I started skateboarding to kind of fill that void of riding sideways on a board. Really lucky my parents took me over to California. We went to the OP Pro when that was at its height. That was incredible. And then we went to Ventura for a few years. And then I was probably, by that point, I was 16, 17, and started coming on camping trips down to Newquay. Once one of my mates could drive, we'd go to Devon, we'd just cruise around. But still always living in Manchester, and then we started going to the Canaries when we sort of got jobs. Um, Surfing, went to France, but still always based in Manchester. And then 2008, a friend of mine moved down to Cornwall, and he used to be posting. That's when Facebook was quite popular then, but he used to be posting pictures of him doing Dornies. And I think, I don't know how much longer I can live knowing he's down there with the opportunity of surfing every day, and I'm stuck up here in Manchester. So 2010, I moved down to Cornwall. And it's one of them decisions you make. You think, why didn't I do this earlier? Why didn't I move to Cornwall? And anyway, But then once you're down here, you, as much as when you've got a family, you've got certain commitments that you can't always get out of. You can't just ditch everything to go surfing. But whenever the surf's good, I'm pretty fortunate that I'm able to get in. And even since the amputation of my arm, I probably surf as much, if not more, than I did prior to the operation. But surfing has given me so much in so many ways, not just riding waves, it's the experiences of traveling different countries, the friends I've met, the people I've met through surfing have become lifelong friends. Um, and it wasn't something I was willing to give up due to the amputation of my arm. And when you see someone like Bethany Hamilton who's set a precedent for what can be done, and then because of the algorithm on Instagram, once you start clicking on one amputee surfer, you start to become aware of more and more and more. Not just surfers, people, there's
Mm.
people with differing abilities who are doing all sorts of incredible stuff, and it, I guess it's empowering to see what people are able to achieve in the face of adversity.
100%. And it's definitely, there's a lot more out there now, isn't there, about different, um, all sorts like physical and mental uh, sort of difficulties people go through and how you sort of come through the other side. And there's a lot more, I think, because there's so many more options, technology's improved and different sort of disciplines. There's, yeah, it just makes it a lot more accessible for people. I mean, I was coaching at the Wave a couple of years back, and we had a few adaptive surfers come through every probably few weeks. I had the honor of being at the World Champs in North Wales in 2022, and watching some of them guys and girls absolutely shred it up. I can never remember his name. Pretty
Um,
certain it's a Brazilian guy, and he
oh,
absolutely rips. I was like, "You're surfing better than I could ever hope to." I probably have to have about 3 years worth of lessons with like Taylor Knox or someone like that just to get even close. Um, but yeah, I think we're thanks to technology and everything. A friend of mine who I'd done a PT course with, TJ, he had lost. I think it was above the knee amputation through an unfortunate incident and a Ferris wheel. Sort of landed in the plant room underneath from quite high up. Uh, but he's now gone on to become a pro footballer. He's played for the England squad and one of the European teams as well. I was having a conversation with him one day, and I mean, this was 2012, beginning of it, and he was talking about like just the cost of the equipment, but how far it's come. Like he was talking about like that little tiny bend you get in a prosthetic foot. Um, like when you get like your I don't know what's called, the carbon sort of curved one. I'll call it that.
yeah,
Um,
the instep
and it was really
basically.
interesting. But yeah, it's come so far with things like that, and just like you say, Bethany Hamilton was definitely one of the more infamous athletes to really go, look, this doesn't have to hold you back. This is, as hard as it might be for some people, this is fully mindset. If you're prepared to ride the wave of emotion through all this, then you can come out the other side. It depends on how you want to look at it. I can't talk. I've got my limbs. I'm fit and healthy. Other than a couple of knee ops, I'm good to go. So I've not had to endure anything like that. But just going off of what I've heard from different athletes and uh, regular Joes as well, coming through something that sort of trauma and everything else, you've just got to really want it, I suppose, at the end of the day. And obviously, you do. You're out in the water at every opportunity. Like I say, logistically, it's a lot easier now in Cornwall than it is in Manchester. Um,
Yeah,
so,
um, the mindset thing is massive, and you don't necessarily. It's not something I don't know. It's not something you're massively aware of. That I just really like surfing, and I'm sure it's the same for other para surfers who just really enjoy surfing. It's not an onerous thing. Obviously, it's been difficult to get back surfing. Obviously, there was days when I first started getting back in the water where I wasn't getting any waves. I didn't really know what I was doing. It was incredibly frustrating. Um, the self doubt whether am I going to be able to do it? Prior to the operation, I said I'm going to surf again. I'm going to surf again. That's what I'm going to do. But when you start getting back in the water and the sea, it doesn't care, does it? The sea doesn't know that you've got a limb missing. The sea doesn't take it easier on a person with limbs missing or with no limbs missing. So there was frustration and there was self doubt about whether I could do it. But I think in any walk of life, confidence in yourself is massive. And once I got one wave, and I knew, right, I can do it. I've got one wave, and if I can get one wave, I can get two waves, and if I can get two waves, I can get three waves, and that self belief gradually increases and increases. And this winter, I've always had a bit of a hang up on going left, and I don't know if that's because it's my left arm that's missing, and for some reason, for 18 months or so, I found going left really, really difficult. And then this winter, probably the best, not the best waves, but some of the best waves I got were going left. And I know it's not an amazing wave at Cowan and Great Western when it gets over 3 to 4 foot, but there's a day where it was sizable for me. And I'd say it was solid, 4 to 5 foot in the bay. And they had my GoPro camera on. And one of the waves I got are going left. For me, I'm not. I know that the world of surfing now, people are surfing 60, 70, 80 foot waves, and a 5 foot wave is nothing compared to that. But still a quite a big wave, a 5 foot wave.
Yeah.
And to know I could go left on bigger waves was just another massive boost to my self confidence, and also getting out in because I've got a duck dive with the like try and duck dive with one hand and get the board under with one hand. It there is always a bit of apprehension about paddling out when it's bigger. That am I going to be able to get out? And part of the operation, they collapsed my left lung to get the tumor out, and my breathing ever since has never. I don't think it's ever fully recovered. And the initial paddle out, I'm always blowing. I'm always out of breath, and I get my breath back once I get out. Once I'm out, and whether it's adrenaline, whether whatever it is, I can surf now for 2 hours, 2.5 hours. But building up that stamina for surfers, you don't just do that overnight, do you? It's got to be gradual, and you've got to be committed. And I suppose that's the same with anything. You've got to be committed to it to want. If you want it within reason, you can get it, can't you? If you keep putting the effort in, if you keep putting the work in, incrementally, you build up. You build up your confidence. You build up your stamina. You build up your level of skill. You build up your level of ability. But it doesn't happen overnight. Um,
Yeah, you got to get your reps in at the end of the day. Like you say, it's with anything. Um, Even having like the mental resilience to carry on going. You just got to keep turning up, keep showing up, do what you can do. Listen to your body, push it a little bit, and then go back again on the next day or the next time, and keep going with it. Um, Out of curiosity, do you have the similar sort of setup on your board as like Bethany? So where I know she had that little handle in the middle, didn't she? I haven't actually seen your board, so
yeah, so I get the handles you would have on a rescue board.
yeah,
I get one of them, but they're like a double strap. And Nigel Simmons, Ocean Magic, and Daz, they do all that. They've been really good with me. They've put the plugs in the board and fastened the handle on for me, and
nice.
they've always done it free of charge. So really grateful to the guys at Ocean Magic, Nigel Simmons, Daz, for just enabling me, doing that for
Yeah,
me, doing it for free. Because like any para surfer, we're all self-funded. Um, and that's that's my choice to surf. But I know the people who go to competitions and you have to the competitions are one in Byron Bay, one in Costa Rica, one in California, one in Portugal. That's a real financial commitment to be able to do it. And in a way, something that should be incredibly inclusive by virtue of the locations becomes exclusive. That you need to be able to finance trips around the world, and it's amazing that people are able to do that. Um, but in some ways, it does prevent a lot of people being able to engage in to be on the sort of the parasurf
Yeah,
circuit as it was.
yeah, it's definitely mission. Hopefully, I mean, it seems to be heading in the right direction anyway. Obviously, you've got the time of recording, you've got the roadshow going on, and like Cotty was down at Bournemouth yesterday at my mate's surf school, um, and yesterday and Saturday, I think. But yeah, that looked like a great time. They picked the right days because it's gone grey and rainy today. So yeah, I think there's a little wave out there for them to have a bit of fun on. And Yeah, it's so hopefully over the next few years there'll be a bit more money going into it. I know Surfing England are really pushing it as well, in talks with sort of Sport England and everything, trying to get the funding for surfing in general. So hopefully the adaptive and para side of it isn't too far behind the rest. Hopefully we can get it all in and spread their money pots sort of fairly across the different disciplines of surfing. So have you got any plans in terms of your surfing over the next couple of years?
Yeah, so um, the the para surf competitions are divided into classifications by whether you've got a limb missing, whether you're prone, whether you're the partially sighted categories. And unfortunately for me, kneeboarding, the classification is only open to surfers with lower limb amputation. So the competitions I surf in an unclassified category. So to get classified, I would have to surf in stand up one, which is for people with upper limb amputations. And probably for 18 months, I'd had a few little dabbles at stand up surfing, but there was an element that it just reminded me of what I was missing, and kind of obviously I'm not able to do stand up surfing the way I did when I had four limbs. So I kind of just parked stand up surfing and was kneeboarding, and I really love kneeboarding. I think that will always be my go to when the surf's good. It be get out on my kneeboard because I can surf the kneeboard in the same way I did when I was doing stand up surfing. But at the start of the year, Surfing England opened up the para surf team for wildcard entries. So I was fortunate enough to be accepted onto the Surfing England para surf team as a wildcard.
Nice.
And over the last 3 months or so, I've been doing a lot of kettlebell training 3 times a week, trying to work towards the one arm press up. And that's primarily because at this year's para surf comp up at the Wave, my aim is, well, not my aim. I am going to enter stand up one as a stand up surfer, and that'll be a classified category. And then in theory, if I could ever afford it, then I could go out to the championships over in Huntington Beach or whatever and compete against other surfers uh, with an upper limb
Mm.
um, missing. And that's my goal really for this year. I guess the benefit of doing the stand up surfing is when the surf's not amazing, if it's 1 to 2 foot or whatever, and you think it's not really worth getting out on the kneeboard for, it's like I don't want to say it's a fallback because I've had a few surf recently where I've gone out on my adapted foamy and got to my feet and ridden waves standing up. And we had a maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago over at Fistral. There's a group called the Vehicle, which operate out of the surf sanctuary at Headland Hotel, and it's like a men's there's a sort of a mental health group around surfing and
Mm.
camaraderie and I've been over there a couple of times, and they're all predominantly beginners, so it's perfect for me because I'm effectively a beginner at stand up surfing again. And the surf was about 2 foot, 2.5 foot, maybe 3 foot on the sets, and because it was high tide, there must have been a bit of a sandbar. So when they break a bit further out, I could catch them further out, and then they'd reform in the middle. And if I could stumble to my feet by the reform, when it worked on the inside section, I'd be up and riding. And can't tell you what the feeling was to be up, standing up. And although it's an 8 foot foamy, so it's easy to get waves on, but not particularly good at turning. But I was able to get on the face of them, do a bit of carvy, and maybe a very slight cutback. And as I said to you 10 minutes ago, confident, thinking, oh, I've done it, I can get to my feet. And my technique of getting to my feet is, um, it's not amazing because what I'm doing is basically getting to my kneeboard position, getting to my knees, one hand on the strap, and then having to pull my left leg around and get my foot planted. And once my foot's planted, then I can stand up. And one of the things I'm hoping to do through being with the Surfing England Para Surf team is get a bit of see that technique probably needs breaking down and rebuilding almost into a more into a smoother pop up than it is at the moment because getting to your knees and then trying to get your foot up, it, it,
Out of
your balance is
curiosity,
all over the place.
yeah, I haven't tried this, so I don't really know. But from coaching beginners, the bog standard way, obviously they come into sort of the prone position here, and as they push up into like a cobra or a yoga pose, they then slide their knees up. How easy would it be for you, or how achievable would it be to have your hand in the center, whether that's on your handle or just palm flat, and then obviously it'd be a lot of core and hip flexor work to then slide your knees up. From there, what we teach them, obviously their hands are flat on the deck. They then put their front foot in between their hands, and then sort of as they stand up, their hips twist into position and their arms come up. How would that be? Could that possibly work?
It's interesting you say that because I was having this discussion with the guy I do my kettlebell training with, and we basically what you've just described there is what he. Whereas I'm kneeling, it's hard to describe, and I need to make my kneel more of a almost like a tabletop to get my leg under. Um, and I've been saying this for 18 months that I need to get a bit of wood, almost the shape of a surfboard, put the handle on it with maybe a bit of padding on it for a minute, and practice it there. And as Mike, the guy I trained with, said to me, well, if you want to do it, you'll do it.
Hmm.
And that's the fact I've been saying it for 18 months and I still haven't done it. There's a part of me that's you just need to do it. And there's a French guy I know through Instagram, a guy called Benoit Moreau, he's lost his right arm. He is an unbelievable surfer. He's really really good. He kneeboards, he surf mats, he does stand up surfing. He's incredible. And I said to Benoit, how long was it before you got up standing? He went, it took about a year. I went, and what was your process? He went, I just did pop ups every day. I was just doing 50, 100 pop ups a day in my house. And to look at myself there and think, am I matching what he's done to do that? No, I'm not. And if I really want it, that's the step I need to make.
Yeah. So
And
sometimes
every
it
time
is.
I say it, I think, right, that's it, right, I'm gonna sort that out, and then I'll go away and do something else, and
Yeah.
yeah, you can always do more, can't you?
Yeah, that's it. It's I'm curious. So can you? I know it's hard without doing, but try and describe currently how you get into your kneeboard position.
Well, so I paddled, obviously kicking with my legs, maybe a couple of paddles with my arm, and then really the handle should be at a different angle, but because it's at a 90-degree angle to the board, when I look at videos of myself, my hands like that, and effectively I just kind of get my head down, and then it can be a bit hit and miss really because obviously I've got one chance to land it, my knees right on the knee pad, and if they're too far forward, obviously it pearls and I go over the falls, and if it's too far back, there's too much of the board in front of me. But probably 9 times out of 10, it's just through repetition, isn't it? It just repeat,
Mm.
repeat, repeat, repeat. I've built up that technique of it's very difficult to describe on of it's just basically putting pressure on your arm against the strap and pinging the knees from that prone position. But it's a lot easier when you're on a wave if it's going down, isn't it? Rather than it being flat. The steeper
Yeah.
it is, the kind of easier it is to get on it.
So I've got loads of thoughts going through my head now, trying to figure this out. One option, and I think Zoe might have done it actually. Like I say, I'm just racking my brains. Could you, depending on the wave, obviously, angle your takeoff that little bit more and then proceed to stand? Now, don't get me wrong, I've spent so much time in the bays. I know how quickly they close out. So I know that the timing's not always there for that. But in theory, on a cleaner day or a smaller day where it's peeling a little bit more, could you possibly angle the takeoff? And if you're able to use your forearm a little bit more to help sort of grip and like maybe have an overhand grip on your handle so that you can get that whole forearm in to then slide both your knees up. From there, in my mind, in theory, you can turn your hand flat onto the deck, bring your front foot through, and just use. You might start having to do a few more lunges, but press up from that front. You're a regular foot, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So use your left leg to then stand up as you would. I'm probably going to start having a play around with that as well because that's quite interesting.
I watched the surf coach breaking down Bethany Hamilton's pop up, and it was really interesting. And you're absolutely right with the angle takeoff. That if I try and take off and go straight and turn, it's incredibly difficult because you've got all the white water bouncing you around. But if it is peaking, there's a bit of a shoulder to go onto, and I can just get the angle takeoff. Then I can stumble to my feet almost on the face of the wave, and it's not as bumpy, is it? But if I try and
Yeah.
take off straight and turn, as soon as the white water, and although it's an 8 foot foamy, it's not particularly wide. It seems quite narrow. And I've got a board, an old board, a 610 that I used to ride as a stand-up surfer that I had specially made to surf in the bay. It's in the middle, it's 3 inches thick and it's wide, but really tapered in at the back with really nice rails. And it's a board I can surf really well. And I'm just waiting to get a handle put on that. And I think because it's wider and it's got a rounded nose on it, I think it'll offer a lot more stability on on takeoff. But we're having a bit of an issue trying to find the plugs to sink into the deck. That's another job that I need to do that reminds me of on the to-do list. But you're absolutely right about the angled takeoff, and it, it is something that I need to just play around with on land and have it perfected on land before I even because as soon as you're in the sea, things are happening. A wave happens. Although time sort of slows down when you catch a wave, doesn't it? It still happens at a million miles an hour. There's a lot goes on in a split second. Isn't there? Paddle, paddle, paddle on your feet, bang, you're off. But that does seem to slow down when you're actually doing it, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's funny. Who was I listening to recently? Uh, Someone was saying how you it's finding keywords and so like trigger words with surfing because if you were to break down, just say a bottom turn, for example, you could actually be thinking, right, paddle, look left, look right. What's the shape of the wave doing? Right, as soon as I can feel that the power lifting the tail. Right now, I need to really arch the back, keep the nose up, get my hands in position. Quick little look, make sure I'm not going to drop in on anyone. Right, press up, do my pop up. Right, is that how's that wave looking now? You've then got to compress, ready for the bottom turn, blah blah. And there's so many things going through your head. You cannot, you don't. It's not efficient or ideal to be thinking about every tiny little stage. Whereas if you were to break it down into two, maybe three trigger words, so even if that is just I don't know, drive, for example. So as you start paddling for the wave, you've got the word drive in your head because you know that in order to drive hard off the bottom to get a decent maneuver off the top, you need to do these things. So you spend time, like you've just said, on land perfecting it, but perfecting the recall for the word drive. So in your mind, when you think drive, you know that means right, compress into the bottom turn, angle the nose of the board, decompress up the wave. Right, now I need to start looking where I'm going next. So after that, I'm going to be compressing again at the top to drive off the back, off the tail of the board, in the lip, blah, blah, blah. Right, repeat because now I'm dropping back in from the top after the first maneuver. So drive could be 8 steps compressed into one so that when everything is going on in the water, maybe you're halfway through a conversation with someone and that set wave comes in and you're like, yeah, great, and start paddling and going, you're still thinking about what John's just been talking about, how he went down the pub last night, blah, 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 and the story he was halfway through telling before the wave come. Because let's face it, that's quite a common occurrence for the average Joe surfer. We're not surfing at heat. We're probably out there with a mate or two having some weird and wonderful conversations about life. So then you still want to work on your surf, and you're like, right, okay, I'm paddling, drive, and then you put that into motion. Um, but yeah, it's I thought that was quite a good way to sum it up, and it's really bugging me. I can't think who it was. I think it might have been Taylor Knox. Um, I watched quite a bit on him this year, um, and sort of his coaching methods as well. But yeah, yeah. I'm definitely going to be spending some time thinking about that pop up because that's really interesting. I'm sure there's a way we can blend that sort of standard surf coach pop up level with adapting that for yourself. And in my mind, it can work by it's just getting your knees in the right place and that sort of tabletop position. Obviously, for yourself, it would just be bringing that
Mm.
right hand into the center a bit more. Like you say, if you have got that, you definitely want that wider surface area under your chest because that's where you definitely want the stability anyway. You could potentially look at a board that maybe tails off a little bit more, so that when you are turning, that makes it a lot easier. But you still want plenty of sort of girth around that midsection just to um, just to get you going once you're up. I mean, if you look, what's popped into my head is the old sort of Jerry Lopez single fins. Something along them lines would probably be quite good. You can catch the wave
Yeah.
easy enough because you can have it thicker, so you still got that volume. You got the width up the front, just off of the nose, so where your chest is going to be, where your hand's going to be for the pop up. But then once you are up, you got a nice narrow tail that will sit in the curvature of the wave nice, and you'll still be able to get your turns on. So
You
yeah,
pretty much described my 610 there. That I think that board will, but my kneeboarding improved massively just by going up to the wave and having that consistency, that same wave over and over again, where you can just almost finesse your technique on certain things. And I think if I was to, let's say I was to spend a week at the wave doing stand-up surfing 2 or 3 times a day, I think it'd rise exponentially. My bit on that same wave all the time. You can just
mm,
perfect the takeoff, can't you? You can perfect getting to your and it's much easier to get repetition there because the wave is the same, and also you're not kind of battling. the elements as much as you are in the sea, where at the wave, you know where the takeoff spot is every time. You don't have to do loads of duck diving, and that's one of the hardest. Paddling with one arm, paddling out with one arm is such a strange feeling, and it's one of the things I used to really like about stand-up surfing. Like, if you had a stressful day and you jump in the sea and you just open your arms up and you do those paddles, those can feel incredible, can't it? And straight under duck dive under one and paddle, paddle, paddle. And you can really work out the kind of frustration or the angst of the day in that paddle, whereas you don't have that same feeling with flippers because you've pretty much got one speed with flippers, whereas when you're paddling with your arms, you can do a nice leisurely paddle, can't you? But you can also, if you see a bomb set coming or whatever, you can really turn on, I don't want to say the afterburners because I'm never that amazing a paddler anyway, but you can adjust your speed much more than you can with flippers. The faster you try and go with flippers, the less effective it is. It's more about just long, continual.
Yeah, it's
But
more
as
technique.
a result, my thigh muscles are massive now.
Yeah, that's it. It's going to get that strength there in your knees, isn't it? That's for sure. Um, Funny enough, that's made me remember I started trying body surfing once. I used to live at the small little hotel, Surfside on South Fistral, and I got into the old hand plane body surfing for a bit, and it was great because it just sort of mooch down, throw your fins off, on jump in off the rocks. You didn't have a board to contend with; like it was just easy. But wow, I remember like swimming out after a wave and like your leg muscles are just on absolute fire. And I hadn't worn fins for a long time, and the anterior tibialis, so your shin muscle, alongside your shin bone, oh, it was like it hadn't been used for a long, long time, and then suddenly it's gone into like this high intensity overdrive mode. For the next couple of days, like even just flexing my foot, like just walking, especially with the amount of hills, um, going up and down the Nuki. And especially when you live out on Pensai, you have a hill just to get anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, oh wow. Sports massage friend of mine. Now I don't know if you're watching now, but she, it was that muscle was so tight. It almost felt like the shin bone. She's like, "Is that your bone or the muscle?" Like, no, that's the muscle. It's absolutely rock solid. Don't worry about your fingers. You need to get your elbow in there today. And don't worry about pain. It already hurts. Yeah, that's it. Definitely wakes them up. But yeah, I can imagine like you when you are just sort of paddling normal, you can just dig deep and get it done. Like you say, you see that bomb set coming through, or um, like even if there's just a nicer wave coming, you're like, oh, I can get to that if I get sort of 15 feet over and digging in. So, out of curiosity, how do you find surfing with crowds now? Has that changed at all?
Yeah, try and avoid try and avoid crowds. One for self-preservation, that I don't have the ability to manoeuvre particularly quickly out of the way. Um, and the rising popularity of surfing, there's a lot of people in the water, and it does seem to me that it's becoming increasingly dangerous where people don't necessarily adhere to protocol of surfing, and you will see people paddle for waves that maybe, if you're Alan Stokes or you're Bearman or you're any of that, that they can take off in front of people and make the takeoff and get out of the way, whereas some people take off at critical points on weight and stack it, and you've got a board coming at you, and I don't have the ability to move myself out of the way quickly enough. So I do try and avoid crowds, and one of the reasons I try and surf out of the way of people. And plus, I don't want to be responsible for hurting someone else. I don't want someone to hurt me. Obviously, I know no one sets out to intentionally hurt people, but sometimes when you watch surfing in the bay, there is some frightening things happen where I know we all want to get a wave, don't we? We all want to catch a wave, but sometimes you're putting other people's, I don't want to say other people's life in danger, but you're endangering other people with your takeoff, and actually let that wave pass. Let the person who's paddling out just get out of the way and get another wave. So it is something I'm pretty self-conscious of, and I've often thought about getting myself a helmet actually in case I do get run over, or when you've got if you're surfing a sort of 8 foot 9 foot board and you've got a 8 foot 9 foot leash, you've almost got a kill radius of sort of 16 to 18 feet, haven't you? And I've seen, like I say, I've seen some things in the bay where it, you do wonder what people are thinking at times that could have really
Yeah.
hurt someone there. I've seen a guy nearly get his head taken off by a Malibu, and he was a good surfer, and he popped up. I'm like, "Are you all right?" And he went, "Yeah, how close was that to me?" I went, "That must have missed you by an inch, mate." And just
Yeah.
those boards have got a lot of weight in them, haven't they? And when they're propelled by a breaking wave, if that strikes you anywhere around here, a friend of mine got hit in the head with a fin, and it caused him a lot of problems. So I, I I do try and avoid crowds. I do try and sit on my own, or maybe surf less good waves where there's fewer people, but you maybe have the pick of the better waves that are coming through rather than. And I don't want to try and compete with people on the peak who are able-bodied either, because um, yeah, we're out in the Maldives, and if you've got two arms, you're going to get into it far easier than I am with my one arm. So I do try and avoid crowds, but that's
Yeah.
not to say that people in the water aren't supportive of me. A lot of people, well, not a lot of people, but there are people who come up to me and are really generous with their, I don't know what the word, appraisal or feedback of what I'm
Yeah.
doing, and it it is that nice when people recognise the effort that's gone in to be able to surf, and I'm always grateful for people who do take the time to kind of have a chat or find out what's gone on. And
Yeah.
so obviously I surfed prior to the operation, and there's people out there who go, "Yeah, I used to see you all the time, and then you were in the water for 6 months and you're back, and but you've got one arm. What's gone on?" And it is always nice when people do stop to have a chat and um, are generous with
Do
their
you
commentary, if you will.
do you ever spread some fear in amongst the new ones and go, "Oh, mate, I was out at Watergate and there's just the shark rocked up."
Yeah.
I'd avoid
Um,
Watergate.
yeah. I know a guy who, well, I don't know him, but through Instagram, that he lost his leg, and he's got a T-shirt that said it was a shark. It wasn't. I think he was
Yeah.
in a car accident or something. But
Yeah.
I do like that T-shirt. I think it says it was a shark that did it. Um,
Nice.
but I have said to a few kids, they're like, "What's happened?" I said, "Oh, it was a shark," and then they've been terrified. So I stopped saying, "No, it wasn't a shark. Don't worry, it wasn't a crocodile."
Yeah.
You don't
Clears
want
the
to
waters.
terrify kids, do you?
Um, yeah. Oh, brilliant. So you mentioned earlier about your training and that you're sort of working towards your one arm push up, which oh, nightmare. That's always been a goal of mine, but I've never really pushed hard enough. I was sort of grown up watching the Rocky films and be like, yeah, let's do it. But for you, it's obviously it's quite necessary now. So what sort of? I did watch a few videos, and you got sort of your scaffold board with the pallets, and you're sort of yeah, you're sort of scaling it back and starting from an easy position, build up the strength, build up the reps, and then obviously you'll get closer and closer. How is that going? Like, is there what other stuff you do with your training?
And so I'm really fortunate with the guy I train with, a guy called Mike too, who's a strong first accredited coach. He's amazing. It's all about technique. It's not about smashing out 1,000 reps and destroying yourself. His thing is it's always about training to leave enough in the tank that if you want to go surfing after we've trained, you've still got that energy in the tank. It's not about destroying yourself. It's about gradually building up the technique and incrementally getting stronger. So it's predominantly all kettlebell work we do. And then, like you say, the scaffold plank. it's called ACE training apparently, artificially created environment. So probably started with the scaffold plank at 45 degrees, um, and it's about that connection of the lat and the rotator cuff and keeping. He's been very uh, he's been very focused on strengthening my rotator cuff and my lat and keeping this shoulder healthy because obviously it's the only one I've got. Um, and you do start to there's a lot of one arm plank and one leg and one arm plank. And I can probably get it down. It's probably don't know what I probably got it down where I've been able to do one at about 20 degrees, which is still a long way from the floor. And there are times when I'll do one on the floor with Mike, and he'll have a great big sort of elastic band around me, and he'll just take some of the weight off with it.
Yeah.
But there's a point where you're going down where you've got to hold it and hold it and hold it. And it's the belief that you can get back up from that point by keeping that lat engaged and keeping the whole body engaged. But it's not going to be something. I came off my board maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago and went head first into the sand and really cracked my neck. And I feel incredibly lucky that I didn't break something in my neck. But I really hit the bottom hard. And I've had to sort of take a step back with the training a bit just to let my neck heal. So where I was training 3 times a week and training once with Mike, um, I have had to sort of ease off it a bit. But once I've done with this, I'm going to go out and do a bit. But one of the things that I've learned through this whole journey since amputating my arm is the value of having purpose in your life, having something that you're working towards. So initially it was getting myself fit enough to go back in the sea. Then it was to get to my knees and to be able to ride, to be able to kneeboard. Then it was to be able to go left on my kneeboard. And obviously now it's to stand up, but also to do the one arm press up. And we're probably what now? We've probably been doing, probably been working towards it for 4 months, and it's going to take at least another 4 months, if not another 8. I don't expect to do it in the next few weeks. You know what I mean? But as I said, it's about incrementally building up, isn't it? Not just the strength, but the confidence and the technique. And I always think in life that like some of the times I've been most happy is when I went to university, working towards my degree, or when I was trained to be a teacher, working towards getting that qualification. It's never about the end. It's never about the piece of paper at the end, is it? It's always about that journey to get to it. That's the bit that's enjoyable.
Yeah.
And I think what's happened with my arm has really reinforced that to me that it the day when if I get it, the one arm press up, it'll be amazing. What a fantastic feeling. But it's the journey towards it that's the enjoyable bit, isn't it? And enjoy the journey, enjoy the process of learning
Yeah.
and growing. And every time I do it, uh, things start to make sense more in your head how you do it. I can feel now the importance of connecting that lat and the shoulder keeping it in. But you only do that through repetition, don't you? You only do it. People can tell you how to
Yeah.
do it and tell you the importance of it. It might just be me, but I only truly learn when I'm actually engaged in the process, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I'm exactly the same. I couldn't do university because I just I don't do well in a classroom environment. I switch off. Potentially got ADHD. Who knows? I'm not even worried about class myself because I'm going to join about 6 billion other people with it. Um, so I know that for me, getting stuck in, I'll certainly stick a video on or I'll listen to someone telling me how to do it, but I need to be there with the drill, with the dumbbell, with the tools, whatever it is, in order to learn. And it's that sort of, well, you got the motor neuron sort of communication as well. So you started doing it, your body's learning how to do it, your mind's learning how to do it. So it's going to resonate on a much deeper level rather than just reading out of a book. If you were to read that process out of a biomechanics textbook, it would probably bore 95% of people. It would bore me to a point. Um, all I'm going to be doing is trying to imagine that in the mind. Um, Maybe reading it into chat GPT at the same time, go, right, do a video and explain this. So retract your shoulder blade, engage your latissimus dorsi, blah blah blah, and all these big words going through, and go, all I want to do is go up and down, but there's so much more to it. um so yeah, I mean, obviously, like, I'm sure Mike goes through it with you, like negative training, which essentially would have been the banded assistance as well, sort of overloading that muscle for time under tension to build the strength. And that's where a lot of people don't realize. Like for me, I absolutely hate pull ups. I don't like them. I've never enjoyed them. Being a heavier set guy, it was always going to be that little bit more work for me to do. So I rarely do them. I'll do a lot more bent over rows and dumbbell rows and whatever else. But it's they're such a good exercise for your surfing and for your paddling, because I do a lot of scapular mobility work. So you'll dead hang off the bar and then just retract your shoulder blades like that, and that's about it. Um, but that will help the paddling no end, because for proper paddle technique, as you'll know, you want to retract your shoulder blade and then pull, because you're activating your lat muscles more. So rather than everything being in the shoulders, when you paddle, you want to get your lats involved, because for me, my lats are about that wide and about that long, and my shoulders like that. You're like, well, let's use the big muscle because it's not going to fatigue as quick and it's going to do a much better job. And as you were saying, the shoulder's so prone to injury, whether that's pulls, tears, RSI, whatever it is, you want to prevent that as much as possible. And obviously, Mike's going through all that sort of injury prevention work with you, keeping it super strong. Like you say, by bringing it down into incremental steps, because if you go too fast, too quick, if you jump down on the floor now with no warm up and try pushing that, you could tear something. You could do your pec mine or whatever it's going to be. I've got slight impingement in my shoulder at the moment, so any sort of external rotation um, fires up all the way through the front here. So I'll be off to physio later on for round two. Um, but it just shows how quickly things can go wrong. So having the right training program to benefit yourself, like as an individual, is paramount to improving. Um, So yeah, I mean, if you we'll start rounding it up, but if you had three pieces of advice for anyone, they don't have to be pros, they don't have to be aspiring to be competition surfers, and they don't even have to surf, but majority of the listeners probably do, um, due to the namesake. What would them three bits of advice be?
Oh, one would be to go easier on yourself. We're all our fiercest critics. Would be just to be kinder to yourself. There's times when I've been out, and I think that's something that's changed in my surfing since the amputation of my arm. That prior to losing my arm, if I didn't get a set amount of good waves that I determined beforehand, it wasn't a good surf, and I'd be down on myself. I'd beat myself up about it. That God, you surf for 40 years, and that's the best you can do. And since the amputation of my arm, that's changed. If I get one good wave now, I'm buzzing. And if I get two, three, four, five, that's incredible. But one decent wave will do me. So one would be to be easier on yourself. Um, two, I guess, would be, put the effort in. If you want to improve, put the effort in around it. Um, whether that's strength work, whether that's swimming, whether that's breathing work, whatever. And I don't know, not to get hung up on what you perceive as failure. Just
Yeah,
that's what I saw that Michael Jordan quote that obviously is recognised as probably the greatest basketball player ever, and I saw a quote where he said, "Of all the 3 pointers I scored, I missed as many as I scored, but no one ever remembers the ones I missed. And that was his thing, that don't dwell on the one you've missed, focus on the upcoming one.
Yeah,
And I suppose it's things like that. Not, I've got waves in my mind. I'm sure most surfers have, where you take off on a wave and it's all walled up in front of you, and you think, here we go, this is going to be beauty. And for whatever reason, your mind's racing about what you're going to do down the wall, and you stack the takeoff, and then you're beating yourself up about, I blew that wave, and still on your mind when the next one comes. It's actually to put that out of the, just focus on the future, not looking back on what you perceive as
yeah.
a mistake.
I yeah, I remember talking to someone years back about it, and a tip they gave me. I think some of it was more surfing bigger waves. I was starting to push myself a little bit more after I moved down to Cornwall, um, and to avoid crowds. I was like, right, just grow a pair and get out of Fistral when it's a bit bigger. If I can make it out the back, I'm happy to be there, sort of thing. But yeah, someone said like when you take that wipe out, try and laugh. Like be a little bit careful because you're underwater, but in your mind, just smile, laugh it off, and go, "Oh well, that's probably entertained someone's day that's watching you." Um, or just relive that moment and enjoy yourself with your own little highlight reel after the surf, and it takes that pressure off. Like, because like you say, if you do spend all that time going, oh, you absolute muppet. Like that was everyone was waiting for you to catch the wave. There's 50 people out that day. They're all watching. That's not going to put you in a good place, not even remotely.
No,
So just going, oops. And then as you paddle out and someone goes, oh, how was it? Like, absolutely cooked it, mate. Yeah, hey ho, let's catch another one. Um, yeah, just move on from it. We were talking before about Zoe and sort of amputee surfing, and there was a quote, wasn't there? Can you
yeah,
remind me what that was?
yeah. And just to give Zoe a shout out, really, that I know she's been listed as one of the top um, female British surfers, and it's a vote on who you can do it. Um, so if you don't follow Zoe Smith Para Surfer, give her a follow. Her story is incredible. What she's been through, but I know she did an article for Dorset Mind, it's called, and the National Share a Story Month. And it's a lovely article from Zoe. If you follow her and give it a read, it's really worth a read. It's her story, the journey she's been through. But there's a quote from that that really resonated with me, and it's but more than my medals, my greatest achievement is recovery itself. My amputation, once a source of grief, is now a badge of resilience. I'm stronger, more empathetic, and more grounded than I've ever been. And having seen Zoe and seen her surf and reading her backstory, it's an incredible story of strength, resilience, and determination, I suppose. So, yeah, there's so many. Phil, Christian Surfboy Phil, who's the para surf team manager, he said at after one of the comps that every single surfer has got a story, and if you just
Mm,
stop and take the time to hear their story, there's a bit of a joke in the amputee surf scene that everything's inspiring. Oh, that's an inspiring person. They're inspiring. I don't think any of us see ourselves as inspiring. We're just people who like to surf, and the desire to surf is
yeah,
what propels us to surf. It's not through anything other than surfing is really good fun. And yeah, if you don't follow
yeah.
Zoe, give her a follow, because her story, what she's
100%.
achieved, is incredible.
I think hers is very much. I think a lot of people could learn from that as well to be a little bit more present, make the most of the time you've got because obviously yours is a slightly longer process in terms of the lead up. There was a slight advance warning, whereas Zoe's was obviously a very. I think she was going on a night out,
Yeah.
car crash. Like there was no warning whatsoever. You sort of wake up, come round from it, and you're like, oh, okay. So yeah, yeah, it's definitely a message for make the most of it. You don't know what's going to happen when it's going to happen, so just yeah, dig in, be as cliche as you like, and enjoy your
Well,
life.
time is the one commodity that none of us know how much of it we have. and
Yeah,
make the most of your time because it is a very, very precious commodity.
yeah,
Is
exactly.
one thing I've
So,
learned, that take every opportunity that comes your way because you never know what's around the corner.
100%. Well, I think that's a really good cue to bring it to an end. But that was great chatting with you, Stephen, and hopefully catch up for a surf this summer. Like I say, I'll be down that way and have my share of waves and pasties again. So yeah, hopefully catch you in the water.
Yeah, nice one, man.
Before we do go, if people do want to get hold of you and learn more about you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, the one armed surfer on Instagram. The one armed surfer. Couldn't believe it when it was available. And I looked through, I was like, yes, I'm not the one armed surfer number one or number two. I'm just the one armed surfer. So yeah, I've connected with some amazing people through Instagram. I know there's a lot of negativity often around social media, but I've been really fortunate that connected with some fantastic people, really supportive people. And I guess it's all around making those little communities, isn't it, of like-minded people who share
Yeah.
similar ideals, ethos, beliefs, just around being sound, being supportive of one another.
Exactly. Well, yeah. So, guys, go check out Stephen. Obviously, you just watched this one, but if you want another one, I highly recommend his conversation with Barton Lynch. Barton's obviously a bit of a legend and a character, so yeah, quite a cool one to watch. But yeah, we'll end it there. Thank you, Stephen, and
Nice one.
yeah, we'll speak again soon. Cheers, buddy.
Yeah, take care, man. See you in a bit. Bye.